Hi, welcome to What the Flick. Christy, Alonzo, Bibbs, and Ben. We're going to talk about the really horrifically sad passing of Carrie Fisher and her mother, Debbie Reynolds, within a day of each other, which just seems impossibly, unspeakably tragic and sad. We're going to talk about their careers, their relationship, their lives. Ben has interviewed Debbie Reynolds, and he'll talk about his experiences with her. But just how horrible this year has been. What a horrible way to end a horrible year.
Yeah, and it's so natural to put these things in the context of the year, but of course, you know, disease and tragedy and accident, they're not going to recognize the calendar.
Yeah.
You know,
It's just weird.
Yeah, right.
I think part of it is that, you know, around the second half of the 20th century, we created this booming celebrity culture. And there's so many wonderful people, talented artists and public figures who all emerged in our consciousness at the same time, and now they're getting old.
Yeah, right.
And I think this is something that we're going to have to kind of get used to, is the idea that people are going to die.
George Michael was not old.
George Michael was weird.
George Michael was the hardest one of all for
Look,
me.
60 years old, Carrie Fisher was not old. And,
No.
But, and Prince was not old, and you know, not to get sidetracked on them, but just, you know, David Bowie, Prince, George Michael, those weren't just singers, right? Those were artists who meant something, whose talent grew their art to a degree that most other, even talented artists don't do. So those, you know, I don't know that we're going to have those, you know, yes, eventually we will, but I don't think, or hopefully not every year, we're going to lose artists of that magnitude. But this was different because this, you know, this was us experiencing seemingly up close, even though it wasn't up close, but it feels up close, a family tragedy, a family that we knew, and Carrie Fisher obviously meant so much to so many people, even though they didn't know her in a way that, and
a family whose business we've sort of been
that's right
embroiled in for years. I mean,
from
About 50 years.
well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
ever since
60.
Eddie Fisher walked out on Debbie Reynolds for her best friend
At
Elizabeth
60
Taylor.
60 years ago.
Yeah, when
you know?
when Carrie Fisher was a year and a half old, you know, like that was I think you could look at that as the beginning of modern gossip.
You
basically.
called it. You had a great line. You should repeat it in your piece for the Wrap. I think you
the
called it
Big
like
Bang of gossip
of
journalism, yeah.
Hollywood gossip. Yeah, and it expanded to the, you know, to the Elizabeth Taylor Richard Burton affair. I mean, it's sort of all part of one long, intense, gossipy story, and you know, and Todd Fisher, Carrie's brother. You know, he's named for Mike Todd, who was Eddie Fisher's best friend and
Elizabeth Taylor's late
Taylor's husband, who died in a plane crash. And so, you know, the sort of that tabloid story of Elizabeth Taylor and Eddie Fisher coming together in the context of Eddie Fisher losing his best friend, Elizabeth Taylor losing her husband, becomes a little more understandable and a little less tawdry. That in their grief, they went to each other, and Debbie Reynolds was
Stuck in the middle.
Stuck in the middle of that, and terrible for her. And then that story continues when Elizabeth Taylor
leaves Eddie Fisher.
Eddie Fisher for Richard Burton. But it's all like they're all part of this beginning of sordid Hollywood that we're so gripped by. So yeah, it felt like she'd lived her entire life very much in the spotlight. And then at 19, she gets, you know, one of the 10 most famous roles.
Well, I think like she was.
She was 19 for Singing in the Rain, right?
Wait,
Yeah.
who are we talking about?
Debbie Reynolds.
Oh, okay. I thought it was about Carrie
19.
Fisher and Shampoo,
Reynolds
but
was
yeah,
Singing in the Rain,
she was
but then
19.
Carrie,
Yes.
But Carrie
yes.
Fisher was 19 when she played Princess Leia, too.
Yeah.
They're both 19.
Well, there you go. So at 19, she'd done a couple of MGM films. Debbie Reynolds had, and then she gets cast in like one of the greatest films ever made, Singing in the Rain, and then proceeds to have a career in the waning days of the studio system, where like it wasn't like the 40s. You had TV encroaching, and you had more and more independent producers going on. But she was one of the last big MGM stars. You know, Unsinkable Molly Brown, The Singing Nun. I mean, they weren't all great, but you know, Tammy, of course.
Thank you.
I
love Tammy.
Michael Schlesinger, a film historian I know, pointed out that one of the interesting things about How the West Was Won is that even though there's this huge cast and there's all these sort of like manly men taming the West, that the through line of that film is Debbie Reynolds' character. Like she's the one that we follow from start to finish. And then, you know, she had a casino in Vegas, and she, got a Tony nomination, and she won an Emmy for Will and Grace, and I mean, she just did all this stuff.
She had a great career in the last 20 years or so, doing really standout roles in movies. Mother is one of my favorite.
Oh,
comedies.
totally, yeah.
She's
Behind
hilarious
the
in that
Candelabra, she's
Yeah,
great.
that was her
in
last
that.
feature now,
I mean, as a kid, I remember her as the voice of Charlotte in Charlotte's Web and the Singer sewing machine commercials. But she was everywhere. And then Carrie Fisher comes along and sort of enters the family business, and she does shampoo, she does Star Wars, and that's this giant thing, and then winds up becoming this really gifted comedian and comedy writer.
And script doctor, famously,
Yes,
which she's now being appreciated for posthumously.
But man, you watch those appearances, those talk show appearances of Carrie Fisher. She was funny.
On Charlie Rose.
Yeah. Oh, no, but I mean,
was a good
on
one.
the Today
Yeah,
Show,
that was
on
good.
Charlie Rose, on the Graham Norton Show.
Oh God, the Graham Norton stuff is great.
She's she was funny, and she's not funny the way, the problem with those talk shows is, all of them, is that I was talking to Jimmy Dore yesterday about what was good about the Dick Cavett show, and what was good about the Dick Cavett show is at least you didn't know what was going to happen. Like, you watch any of those shows, even the ones, whatever one you like, whether it's Kimmel or you like Fallon or you like
Seth Meyers.
Seth Meyers, who at least tries to do something a little different, but you know exactly how they're going to go. But Carrie Fisher was a guest that you didn't 100%.
She would turn the tables on
She would
whoever's
turn the tables, really.
She would start asking questions, and she would derail it. She would hijack it, and thank God she did, because it totally deviated from the nicey nice formula.
She did this on the red carpet for The Force Awakens last year. I don't know if you guys remember it. They were when they screened it, there was red carpet going on outside, and we saw the live feed, and she was there with Oscar Isaac, and someone was just asking her just the pablum questions, the most obvious questions you could possibly ask, the safe stuff. She grabs the questions out of the guy's hand and starts asking the questions for Carrie Fisher to Oscar Isaac. I've seen as many publicity
amazing.
photos of Carrie Fisher flipping off the camera as I have of her smiling. I loved this
That's how
woman.
we should end this, by flipping the camera.
I'm fine with that. We've been kind of dancing around. We've been wanting to put a lot of context in here, but we can't downplay the significance of Carrie Fisher's performance in Star Wars. The significance that had to an entire generation, completely rewriting the history in sci-fi fantasy of the damsel in distress, the person who completely takes over her own rescue, basically denies all of that princess nonsense and decides to define herself as a general. There's someone who completely is in control and in power and sort of sets a path for heroic, in particular, female characters in genre fiction in every movie that has since followed. And it's been incredibly inspirational to a lot of people, and that deserves a lot of credit.
There was a great Twitter thread, and I wish I could remember the woman's name. I cite her in my rap story about Carrie Fisher, but she talked about how it's General Leia from The Force Awakens that's going to mean the most to her, because here's a woman who has lost her son, her lover, her brother, her planet, and she could have given up a million times, and she never does. She keeps showing up, she keeps doing the work. She's a fighter, and that's Carrie Fisher. Carrie Fisher dealt with addiction and mental illness, and this insane
frank
family
about it.
background, and not only thrived, but shared it and wasn't embarrassed to talk about it, and in so doing made it okay for other people to talk about it or to face that stuff and know that they weren't alone in doing so.
It is hard to find a better actor character combination than Carrie Fisher and Princess Leia.
Yeah, because on the page, okay, the idea for the character is strong. It's the actors in that original trilogy who brought out so much of it. It was Harrison Ford's snark and Carrie Fisher's just unwillingness to accept any of the usual crap that you would normally get in a storyline like that, and it comes across in every bit.
I mentioned really fast about Carrie Fisher again, talking about her candidness about her addiction. It was really prior to the advent of every celebrity having a reality TV show, right?
Oh, totally.
Before it was totally normal to open up your life and your stories and your fears and your failures for everyone to see, but it didn't seem self-indulgent. And it helped people, and that was good. But it was true, and it was frank, and
always funny.
Yeah, always funny. But in its honesty, I think that impacts a lot of people. And it wasn't for her own self-aggrandizement, like look at me, look what I've overcome. Like it was just like it was true. I can't wait to see now this documentary that's coming
Yes.
out next year because it played at
Toronto.
Have you seen it?
I have not.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it.
So the two of them, Debbie Reynolds and Carrie Fisher, did a documentary together called Bright Lights, which is now coming out next year, which
On
is just
HBO.
horribly, horribly sad now in retrospect, but clips of it are coming out, and like they're just lovely. Like their interaction is just lovely and funny.
Yeah, their relationship is fascinating, and I mean, Debbie Reynolds. Let's face it, she's one of the last of the sort of Hollywood's golden age that's left. I'm sure TCM has like a running count of who's
Olivia
left.
de Havilland's 101.
No,
still
no,
kicking.
I know she's still out there. Leslie Caron's
right.
alive. June Allison is alive. Like, they're not all gone yet, but we are running out of them.
And you know, and she was a huge friend to TCM and a really good friend of Robert's, and you know, just a significant supporter of ours from the start and throughout, and reliable. And you know, there were few. The reaction that you bring a classic star to a classic audience, and you're going to get a great reaction. But you know, Mickey Rooney, Ernest Borgnine, Debbie Reynolds got the biggest response because the sort of feeling of the connection with them and the audience was visceral. And I interviewed Debbie on one of the TCM classic cruises, and really all you have to do to interview her is set up some stories and get out of the way and don't interrupt them. You know, let her finish, let her get to the punchline, because it works. And she stood up, and she was bawdy and rude and inappropriate, and it was fantastic.
Did she sing?
I'm sure she sang. I don't even remember. I'm sure she sang.
Because that's what we even talk about. She was a great singer. Like she was so wonderful.
Also, I
always loved interviews with Stanley Donen when he talked about why he cast her in Singing in the Rain, because it always meant that Stanley Donen would have to say the words "Abba Dabba Honeymoon," which is the song that she sings in 2 Weeks with Love with Carpenter.
Yeah.
So I was doing some research on Carrie for an interview I thought I had to do when she was in intensive care, and so she did this Q&A with WebMD. Like 20 questions with WebMD. It was really good, but there were two answers that I just thought were so unbelievably special that I'd like to share them. Talking about have you gotten past being Princess Leia, and she goes, have I gotten past it? I wasn't aware that I had. I am Princess Leia, no matter what. If I were trying to get a good table, I wouldn't say I wrote postcards from the edge. I wouldn't say, have you seen When Harry Met Sally? Princess Leia, she said, will be on my tombstone.
Oh
and
my
then
God.
and then this one here, they asked her, you're a renowned Hollywood script doctor. What does it take to heal bad dialogue?
Ooh, good question.
And her response was, make the women smarter and the love scenes better. And that's
All
it.
good.
That's a great
I also want to give a quick shout out both to Reynolds and Fisher, very big AIDS activists and advocates for the LGBT community before it was cool to do so. And Carrie Fisher never wavered, even though her husband left her for another man. You got to admire that level of commitment. No, they were outspoken and funny, and in a town that does not treat women well, they got through it.
They were survivors.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So very sad. Share your thoughts with us, please, and thanks, and Happy New Year.